There is a dangerous social illusion that destroys millions of people before they even realize it's happening. From childhood, most people are trained to believe that being nice is the highest social virtue. They are taught to avoid conflict, avoid discomfort, avoid disappointing others. They learn that being agreeable makes them good, and that keeping everyone happy is somehow the path to respect, connection, and success. But the modern world doesn't actually reward excessive niceness. It rewards perceived value. And those are not the same thing. Because somewhere along the way, many people stop being kind and start becoming psychologically dependent on approval. They sacrifice honesty for harmony. They suppress opinions to avoid rejection. They smile when they feel disrespected. They say yes when they desperately want to say no. At first, it appears socially intelligent. But over time, something strange begins happening around them. People stop listening carefully when they speak. Their presence loses weight in conversations. Their boundaries become negotiable. Their opinions become optional. They slowly transform into emotional background noise in their own social environments. Not hated, not attacked, just ignored, invisible. And the tragedy is that most overly nice people never understand why this happens. They genuinely believe they are building stronger relationships by constantly accommodating others. In reality, they are often teaching people that their needs, standards, and emotions can be deprioritized without consequence. This is the brutal paradox of excessive niceness. The more desperately you seek acceptance, the less psychologically valuable your presence becomes. Because human beings instinctively respect people who appear capable of surviving disapproval. Think carefully about the people who naturally command attention in social environments. They are not always the loudest. They are not always the most attractive. And they are certainly not always the cruelest. But they possess one trait that changes everything. They are comfortable creating tension when necessary. They can disagree without emotionally collapsing. They can say no without drowning in guilt. They can maintain composure while disappointing people. And that emotional stability communicates something incredibly powerful to the human brain. This person values themselves. That signal changes social dynamics instantly, because people unconsciously measure value through emotional behavior. The person who constantly over-explains themselves appears uncertain. The person who apologizes excessively appears psychologically weak. The person who tolerates repeated disrespect appears to have low internal standards. Humans rarely say these things out loud, but socially they feel them. This is why many nice people eventually become trapped in invisible social roles. They become the dependable one, the accommodating one, the emotionally available one, the one everyone leans on but rarely deeply respects. And over time, they begin feeling emotionally exhausted because they are performing kindness from fear instead of authenticity. Real kindness and approval-seeking are completely different psychological behaviors. Kindness comes from strength. Approval-seeking comes from fear. A kind person helps others because they choose to. An approval-seeking person helps others because they fear losing validation. That difference is subtle externally, but enormous psychologically. People can sense desperation even when it hides behind politeness. This becomes even more dangerous in modern environments because today's social systems operate heavily on perception. Social media, workplaces, dating culture, networking, all of them reward emotional positioning as much as competence itself. Perception shapes status. And people who constantly soften themselves to avoid friction slowly lose psychological presence. Why? Because confidence is not communicated through words. It's communicated through boundaries. The ability to protect your time, protect your attention, protect your standards, protect your emotional energy. Scarcity creates value everywhere in life. In economics, in branding, in social dynamics. And this applies to approval too. The less freely available someone's validation becomes, the more psychologically valuable it feels. That's why selective people appear powerful. That's why emotionally disciplined individuals command respect. That's why people become obsessed with those who seem difficult to emotionally control. Meanwhile, overly nice individuals unintentionally communicate the opposite message. My approval is available to everyone equally, and once something becomes psychologically abundant, people stop valuing it. This is why many excessively nice people slowly become invisible in relationships, workplaces, friendships, and even families. Not because they lack intelligence or compassion, but because they unconsciously teach others that they will tolerate emotional imbalance indefinitely. And human beings naturally push against boundaries that do not exist. The uncomfortable truth is that many people only discover their self-worth after experiencing resentment. After years of overgiving, over-accommodating, over-sacrificing, they eventually realize they built relationships where they were appreciated for usefulness rather than respected for identity. That realization changes people. Because eventually, emotionally intelligent individuals understand something critical. Being respected feels safer than being liked. Respect creates stability. Approval creates dependency. The person addicted to approval becomes controllable. Their emotions become manipulated through acceptance and rejection. They become terrified of disappointing people. And once someone fears social disapproval more than self-betrayal, they become psychologically easy to dominate. This is why powerful individuals are often calm rather than loud. True power rarely needs theatrical aggression. It exists in emotional certainty. The ability to remain composed while someone misunderstands you. The ability to walk away without chasing closure. The ability to say no without explaining yourself for 20 minutes afterward. The ability to remain respectful without becoming submissive. That balance is rare, and rarity creates influence. Now, this does not mean becoming cold, arrogant, or manipulative. Many people misunderstand this conversation and swing toward emotional detachment because they believe hardness equals strength. It doesn't. The goal is not cruelty. The goal is self-respect. A truly powerful person is often deeply kind, but their kindness contains structure. Their empathy contains standards. Their generosity contains boundaries. Weak niceness says, "Please don't reject me." Strong kindness says, "I respect both you and myself." That distinction changes every social interaction, because people trust individuals who appear emotionally grounded. They admire people who can handle discomfort without abandoning themselves. And they remember people whose behavior feels authentic instead of performative. Authenticity creates psychological gravity, and gravity creates presence. This is why some individuals walk into a room and instantly command attention without speaking loudly. Their energy communicates emotional independence. They do not appear desperate for validation. They are not trying to perform perfection. They are simply comfortable occupying space without apologizing for existing. That energy is incredibly rare in the modern world. Most people are performing constantly, editing themselves constantly, filtering themselves constantly. They are terrified of criticism, terrified of rejection, terrified of disapproval. But the moment someone becomes emotionally willing to be disliked, their behavior changes. Their posture changes. Their communication changes. And strangely enough, that's often the exact moment people begin respecting them more. Because confidence is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to remain authentic despite fear. The road to reclaiming your presence is uncomfortable. People around you may resist your boundaries. Some may accuse you of changing. Others may become frustrated when you stop overextending yourself for their comfort. But that discomfort reveals something important. Many relationships are tested the moment you stop abandoning yourself to maintain them. And while that realization can feel painful, it is also liberating. Because the people who genuinely value you will adjust to your authenticity. They will not require your self-erasure in order to feel comfortable around you. Over time, you begin realizing that true connection is not built through endless agreement. It is built through honesty, emotional clarity, and mutual respect. And ironically, the people who stop trying so desperately to be liked often become the most unforgettable individuals in the room. not because they dominate others, but because they finally stopped shrinking themselves. So no, being nice is not the problem. Losing yourself in exchange for approval is. Be respectful, be intelligent, be composed, but never become so agreeable that your identity disappears beneath everyone else's expectations. Because the modern world does not remember people who constantly seek permission to exist. It remembers people who stand firmly in who they are. And the moment you stop fearing disapproval, you stop becoming invisible.